Magic 87.6. Hi, Andrew, with you, and Mathew Dickerson. Hello.
Hi, Matthew with you as well.
Yes, I'm here, you're there, we are here, and we all come together to talk the technological stuff.
Are we socially distanced enough, do you think?
I reckon we are. I'm kind of glad that we're not adding to the numbers here, Matt.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, there's already enough people doing that. But look, let's talk about some stuff here. This is the last time payphones. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I used a payphone, Matt.
I can't either. And this is a really confusing one. I don't know what we call it from today, because if it's a payphone that you don't pay to use, you can't really call it a payphone, can you?
No. Is free phone?
Free phone, yeah. Public phone, who knows? But anyway, from today, Telstra is making payphone, or the entire payphone network, will be free to use. So you'll be able to pick up
Wow.
well, let's come up with a name for it. Let's call it free phone. You'll be able to pick up the free phone. You'll be able to ring a mobile or a landline anywhere in this nation free of charge. I think it just got to the point where Telstra said, you know what, we can't be bothered just collecting the piddly little bit of change we get out of those. Why don't we just give up on that and just make the entire network free? It's a bit of a challenge, I think, for Telstra, because they've had all this infrastructure they built. 15,076 of these phones exist around Australia. They've got that real estate. They've obviously got some ownership of those bits of real estate all over the nation, and they've been trying to work out what to do with them. For a while there, they had free Wi-Fi hotspots there, which was great as you drove past in your car and you got Wi-Fi for 38 seconds as you drove past. But they kind of didn't really go that far with that one. So now they've come up with the idea of what the heck, we'll just give it away. Now, it's only going to cost them about $5 million because they didn't actually generate a lot of money. About 11 million phone calls were made on the network last year, which at 50 cents a phone call is about $5 million. So in the whole scheme of things, Telstra's obviously prepared to walk away from $5 million, which obviously isn't a huge chunk of change for them. The only limit will be, or two limits, I suppose. One, you can only go for 6 hours. So that's probably okay for you and I having a chat, but for some people, they might want to chat longer than 6 hours. If they do, they hang up, ring back, and keep chatting. That's fine. And the second limitation is overseas phone calls you'll still pay for, which kind of seems fair enough. Some groups like the Salvation Army, for example, think this is fantastic because people that have been socially isolated, that may not have the funds to buy a mobile phone, that may be in a dark time or dark space in their life and they want to be able to call through to a lifeline or ring a friend, all of that now is available. They just got to find their nearest public phone. I almost said payphone again, their nearest free phone, and they can make a phone call for free. Now, Telstra do emergency calls or have done emergency calls in the past from public phones for free, and sometimes when there's been an emergency on, a bushfire, that type of thing, they'll just make it free from those public phones in that area. But now this is the first time they've said, that's it, all bets are off, knock yourself out, all these calls are free. I don't expect to see lineups at public telephones or free phones in the future because of this, but I think some people will start to use them a bit more.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think ever since I've had a mobile on me that I've ever gotten to the stage where I've not needed to make a call and gone for a payphone.
It's even before I had a mobile phone. I just don't remember going to a payphone that often. I just didn't see the need to be able to ring someone desperately from wherever I was. And then mobile phones came along, and of course we had to ring from wherever we were and whatever we were doing. But yeah, I'm a bit like you. I just cannot. I'm racking my brains trying to think of the last time that I used a payphone, and I just can't remember when.
Dude, I remember once when I was a kid, Matt, and I was in Parramatta, and we lived in Sydney, and I had to go home to Northmead, and I had $10 on me, and all of a sudden there was no $10 on me, and I was like, oh no, I'm in distress here, and I got no money for the bus, and the walk home was 45 minutes, and I'm like, oh geez, I don't know what to do. So I used 1-800-REVERSE.
Oh yes, I remember that.
And my mum was like, you what? And I'm like, I think I've lost my money. And she goes, well, I don't care, and you can walk. And then my parents made me walk 45 minutes home. Even though here I am stuck in Parramatta with no money. And I couldn't remember whether I lost it or I put the whole lot through time zone.
I suspect the latter.
Quite possibly, but I think I'd actually lost it by that stage, Matt, quite literally. But I'll never forget it. It wasn't the fact that I lost my money and I just lost $10 that my parents were angry at me at. The thing that my dad was most angry at was the fact that it was the $3 that it cost the home phone for me to use 1-800 reverse to ring them to tell them that I got the most trouble for.
I was thinking that. I wondered whether the cost of the call was worth more than the actual amount of money that you lost.
I was like, are you serious? Here I am in distress. I'm worried. I'm checking in. And you're sitting here. I got belted for using I never used 1-800 reverse again.
And they're the sort of things, there's a business that doesn't exist anymore because you don't really need that business anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the huge competitive advantages from Tesla is their supercharger network, and they're pretty much exclusive to Tesla, aren't they, Matt?
They are. So all the superchargers that you see around, even the fast chargers, you've got one there on the council building, you've got one there on a couple of the wineries in Mudgee. All of those superchargers are available for Tesla. And I've actually been at superchargers and I've seen a non-Tesla electric vehicle pull up, and they go to look at the connector and try and plug it in, or they try and work out how to make it work, and they come over and ask, and you say, yeah, the way to make it work is you drive that car away and drive in a Tesla, and it'll all work fine then. And they're quite offended the fact that doesn't work with a non-Tesla. But Tesla built that supercharger network. They built it to encourage people to buy Teslas, and it's done the trick. People have been able to use those. They've either had free charging or they pay very small fees to pay at those chargers. But now they're talking about opening that up to all EVs. Now, I can imagine the first thing that will happen is they'll charge non-Tesla EVs a higher rate than a Tesla EV, and that's kind of fair enough. But the second part is it just opens up the electric vehicle network more and more. And I think Tesla and Elon Musk in particular are really keen on just seeing electric vehicles progress forward throughout society, which is good for humanity, but it's also good for Tesla. The more electric vehicles around, the more people will become accustomed to electric vehicles, the more Teslas I'm pretty sure that they'll sell. So it seems like a very nice thing to do. It seems like they'll make a few dollars out of it, but I think ultimately it will drive more sales of more Tesla vehicles.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that has to happen. If especially if you want to see the growth of EVs, there has to be more kind of, can you imagine if they did that with a combustible engine, Matt, and you could only use Woolies Ampol in a Ford and Caltex in a Holden and all that kind of stuff? You'd be like, you know what? I'll just go buy a Gemini that I can put all petrol in. You know what I mean?
It would be a huge advantage, wouldn't it? And that's where Tesla have been. You can use Tesla chargers for a Tesla and non-Tesla chargers for a Tesla. So Tesla's been that universal option, whereas other vehicles mightn't have had that option. So yeah, it makes sense. And it's not too difficult really. In Europe and China, the chargers are standardised. So you can basically plug in one of those chargers right now. You need the software to accept that particular vehicle. So if you plug into a non-Tesla at the moment, it just does nothing. So by loading the Tesla app on, putting your credit card details in there, you'll be able to use that. In America, a little bit more difficult because they've got different adapters in America. There's some sort of a adapter that will be created for those, whether it's the car manufacturers or Tesla that allows you to do that. There'll be something there that will allow that adapter to connect in there. So a few little changes there, but in general, it's still just putting electricity in different formats. I'm sure they'll work it out.
Trust the Americans to be different.
I know.
Bloody different in everything.
Miles and yards and feet. They've got no idea, have they?
Get on the imperial system, people. Seriously, it's not the devil. Now, passwords. I'm going to admit, Matt, I have so many accounts now. Everything needs a bloody account. I can't remember passwords anymore. Thank goodness for autosave.
Well, that's right, and I hope you just write them down on a big sticky note and stick them on your monitor so if someone breaks into your house, they've got every password for you.
No.
One of the problems is with streaming services, and I've done it before. I remember being on an overseas trip actually just before the pandemic hit last year, and we were tripping around through Spain and a few other European areas there, and we went to a number of Airbnbs on our travels, and I reckon half the ones we went into, you'd flick on the TV and I was already logged into someone's Netflix account. So
yeah, nice.
Turn it on and then you'd log out for them and log in your own, and then make sure you remember to log out of yours. And
so, okay, no, just watch this. no. Screw up their suggestions.
So that's a bit of an issue, but more of an issue is that you can go onto the dark web and you can buy a whole range of different accounts, Netflix accounts, usernames, passwords. And I kind of think, why would you bother? A Netflix account isn't that expensive, but I think it's the attraction that you might pay $20 for it and then you've got it forever rather than keep paying a monthly fee for it, and which is why it's important to change your passwords from time to time. But one thing that people do see from time to time is they have no idea that someone else might be using their account, and suddenly they see some recommendations come up for shows that just don't seem like they're the type of shows that they would watch. And you think, wow, someone else is using my profile and they're watching this type of show, which again is something that you wouldn't watch. Or some people get really bold and they create their own profile. They've got your account and they think, no, I'd like to have my own profile to set it up. And suddenly you log on Netflix and you go, who is Jimmy Jab? Why do I have a profile suddenly for Jimmy Jab on my particular Netflix? So then you say, log out of everyone, change your password, and away you go. Obviously, the idea is use different passwords for all your different things, and no one will do that. So just be aware of it, I suppose. It's not the greatest loss if you've got someone else using your Netflix account. It's not good for Netflix. They're probably not getting the same revenue that they would like. It's more just an issue if you get to your limit of how many users you can have, and suddenly you go to watch something, you go, well, why am I at my limit of 3? There's only us sitting here in the lounge room together. No one else is using Netflix. Why have I hit my limit? And that's where it might be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, no, I would have just used it. I would have just watched whatever.
No, you got to do that.
Seriously, I love screwing up people's suggestions. Like, it's cool.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way to do it. Now, the 90s, we all remember the Tamagotchis. My sister had one, Matt. Did you have one as well? She had a dog, I think.
I'm just a fraction older than yourself, and I didn't have one, but my kids certainly have one, and they still tell me about the trauma, the absolute trauma, when I dropped and accidentally stepped on one of the Tamagotchis of the kids. They had about 20 of them, so I don't know why they were so upset, but this Tamagotchi, it had developed to a certain stage in its life and they had to go back and start again, and I was the worst person ever. But I didn't ever have, and maybe this would have got me into having one for myself, but I didn't ever have an R2-D2 Tamagotchi. Now, the big question is, why now? Tamagotchis are gone, they're old, they're out of date. I reckon it's been 20 years since Tamagotchis have been a thing. And on the 11th of November this year, there'll be a new Tamagotchi come out. There'll be an R2-D2. It basically does all the same things that the old Tamagotchis did. You have to look after it. It had to grow. It had to basically be fed and looked after the whole time. It's just got R2-D2 on there. They haven't upgraded the graphics. They haven't upgraded the, I hesitate to call it gameplay, but they haven't updated the gameplay. It's just basically the same as it was 20 years ago with a picture of R2-D2. I'm not sure these are going to be a big seller, but maybe some Star Wars fans will really love the idea.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, how can you shoot R2-D2? He's a freaking robot, for heaven's sakes!
He needs some energy source. He needs something, electricity. Electricity.
What do you need to do? Change the batteries? What is he going to poop? R2-D2 doesn't poop.
Yeah, I don't know. So
Tamagotchi's pooped.
Again, this is the thing. Who came up with this idea? What were they thinking? Maybe they've been testing out. We've talked about cryonics before. Maybe they've been testing out some cryonics, and maybe someone's been frozen for 20 years. They've just brought them back to life, and they go, "Hey, I've got an idea. R2-D2 Tamagotchi."
Yeah. I know, right? I know. You just get that Mike Myers, Austin Powers kind of feel in a Japanese kind of corporate situation. You know, we need to save this company. What do we need? Oh yeah, let's bring back a Tamagotchi. Tablet market was created by Apple, and the brand continues to dominate. Everyone's got an iPad. Yeah, my old iPad Mini still going, Matt.
Yeah, wow. They do tend to plug away for a long time. Obviously, the issue is really around the software that can load on it or the battery life. But you'd be pretty happy with yourself if you created an entire segment of the market. And Apple's done that a few times in its career. The iPod is probably the one that comes to most people's minds straight away. But they created that whole tablet market. And I used to have a tablet, a Toshiba tablet, nothing like a modern tablet. It was actually a notebook PC, but I could spin the top around and fold it over on itself, and then I could write on the screen. I used to love it, but they just didn't take off. And so tablets were around, but they weren't really. And then Apple came out with a tablet, and suddenly the market exploded. From 10 years ago, creating the market segment to still owning that market segment, I think is pretty impressive. So the latest figures came out, and this is for Q2 this year. So this goes from April to June this calendar year. And the sales figures came out, and Apple still came out on top. 43.1% market share, so pretty healthy market share. 12.9 million iPads they sold. You think everyone's got one already, but 12.9 million, that's a lot. Samsung came in second, 8 million, 26.8% market share. And they've got some pretty good tablets out there, but it just seems to be the apps available on the Samsung that probably knocks that market around a bit. Lenovo came in third at 15.7%. Amazon with their Fire tablet, I didn't actually think that was that popular, but 14.4% market share they've got. They've been obviously strong in their terms of their growth for Chromebooks, for tablets, everything over the last year, as people have needed to work from home more, as people needed that technology more with the pandemic. I actually expect sales to slow down from here going forward over the next year. But Apple's pretty confident and pretty happy with where they're at the moment, because not only have they got those great sales in tablets, but they actually top a number of the markets around the world with their iPhone sales as well. In the US, they've got the top 3 selling models. In the UK, they've got 4 of the top 5. Here in Australia, Apple owns the top 2 in terms of their smartphone sales. Japan, they've got the top 3, and urban China, the top 2. So they don't have the majority market share in the smartphone market, but they're pretty happy that they're topping the segments with the best sellers in those markets.
I remember, I bought my iPad mini in 2012, and that doesn't seem that long ago that I actually got one. And I remember taking it to the radio station I was working at the time, Matt, and I took it there because there was this app that interfaced with the program that I used to use every day. And I took it to the radio station, and seriously, it was like what is this great sorcery you're about to kind of do? And everyone was falling over themselves, and they're like, "You're doing what?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Haven't you said no?" And it was the most amazing thing ever. And seriously, for about 3 days, people were like, "You have an iPad and it's doing what?" And it's like, I'm like, dude, this is like, why can't I? And seriously, it was the most mysterious thing ever. It was like, I'm surprised I didn't get hauled into a manager's office, and then hauled onto a stake and, paraded around the office like, cast aspersions like, the great witches of Salem.
I love seeing when musos started turning up, and instead of sheet music or the little boom box to put a bit of drum or backing music in, guitar playing and singing, they turned up with a little iPad and it did everything for them. It gave them the music on the screen, gave them words if they needed it, it provided the backing music. And I thought, wow, that looks pretty cool when you sit there with your guitar and an iPad and that's all you need.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time I ever used a computer to DJ, I can still remember it. I was in Broken Hill at the Barrier Democratic Club, it was called. And one of the blokes came up to me at about 12:30. I think he'd had a few, and he turns around to me and goes, "You're cheating." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm cheating?" He goes, "You're using a computer." He goes, "You're not doing any work." And I went, "Shut up." And all of a sudden I hit a couple of buttons and I transitioned the song. And I'm like, "Mate, I'm still working." And he shook his head, he walked off. And he came back 5 minutes later and he turned around to me and goes, "You're actually a cluey bastard, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, if I can use this to do my job, why wouldn't I do it? And he goes, "No," he goes, I'll pay that. All right. And I said, "All right, you just go back to the bar." And I said, "And you just let me do the job and go talk to that chick there and you'll be right, mate."
Sounds fair.
Yeah.